Hello there, what is going on, everybody? Just got back from seeing Mandalorian and Grogu, and this is going to be my non-spoilery review combined with a review that will have spoilers. So at the beginning of this video, I'm just going to talk about the overall feel of the movie, and then at a certain point, I'll make it very clear. We'll say, all right, now we'll talk about spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, don't worry, I won't spoil anything. And then we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the spoilery stuff after that. So if you guys are interested in Star Wars, or you like Star Wars and tabletop gaming and all that stuff, make sure you click that subscribe button, like the video, share the video, and all that other great stuff. And I do have some props because first thing I want to talk about is the movie theater stuff, because there were buckets, and I ended up getting one that's an actual popcorn bucket. I want to just say something about movie theaters, and these every movie now has like merch, and there's so many popcorn buckets and that aren't really popcorn buckets. Like there was a bust of like Mandalorian, and like in a little thing on his back that's like this big opens up, and you can like put popcorn in there, and it seems like, and it was like $40, and I'm like, what is that? You don't even want to put it, and it's not even that great of a collectible piece. There's better, like, sideshow collectibles and things like that if you wanted a real collectible. There was an AT-AT Walker that was a popcorn bucket, but when we got there, it was already sold out, so I didn't get a chance to get those. But I did like this because this is it's an actual popcorn bucket. You can also use it as a waste paper basket or a storage. It's a proper bucket, and it's weird because when you talk into it, it's like, whoa, it sounds really weird. And then it came with a large cup with a collectible Grogu on top, and then it came with popcorn and stuff. And I didn't even eat that much popcorn. I just take it home, and then we put it in Ziploc bags because my kids are gonna eat it all. Like they love like movie theater popcorn, especially like the next day. So that worked out well. So, as far as the actual movie, though, it was, I went with my oldest son, Christian, who is here in the room, too, so he may have some thoughts. But overall, it was a fun movie. I feel like it was kind of a safe movie. I feel like if you've seen the trailers kind of set your expectations on what you can expect. I think the action was good. I think I think the sound was one of my favorite parts. The music was one of the things that I really liked about the film. There was now we saw it in IMAX, and I think that's a great way to see it because their visuals are always going to be good in a Star Wars movie. But the sound effects are good. I realized something about the Mandalorian theme, that the wah, 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 is very, very similar to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Like wah, 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 wah. But it's the same, like bum 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 bum, it kind of reminded me of what they did with the Emperor's theme, and then that celebration theme at the end of episode 1, where they kind of take something and then they just like change the pacing of it a little bit, and it ends up sounding like a different song, but it's definitely rooted or inspired by a different song. And since Mandalorian is kind of in many ways a space western, how appropriate that theme is. To me, I feel like it's inspired a little bit by The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But that being said, the movie was overall, it was enjoyable. There were some pacing inconsistencies, though. I feel like the movie started out on all cylinders, interesting, exciting, action-packed. Interesting, exciting, action-packed, interesting, exciting, action-packed, and it stayed for a while. And then there's a slump where I call it a slump, but it's a slump for pacing, where there's a slowdown moment. And a lot of movies will have kind of slow, calm, breaks. There's a certain amount of time where you need action going, then you need to catch your breath. Action going and catch your breath. But there's a big part in the movie that is like the pacing does not feel correct, and it's definitely different than what we're used to. I don't know if I would call it bad, but I'd say it felt like there was a slow part that lingered too long. But that didn't make the movie terribly bad. I think the movie suffered only a little bit for the pacing inconsistencies, but I don't think it was definitely a bad thing. Overall, the movie feels familiar. I think the movie feels like what season 4 of The Mandalorian would have been. I think they had said that that's kind of one of the things that they were trying to do. And in many ways, it definitely felt like it had the different, plot devices, setups, twists, and payoffs that you would have gotten from another season of The Mandalorian, all combined into one movie. And I think that's one of the reasons why you had the pacing as it was, because it was probably already written. The story was probably already written to be a certain way, and it might have worked a little bit better as another season. However, that being said, the big budget effects of the movie part of it definitely paid off, because there were definitely scenes that it helped to have a very big budget, because there were some very exciting scenes. There were some very flashy visuals, and there were certain things that I think the higher video effects budget really helped to pay off. So overall, it's a toss-up for me. When we walked out of the theater, I think I was going to give it like a 6 out of 10, which is not bad. 6 is above 5. It's above average. But Christian, I think you said what, a 7?
Like a low 7, high 6, like 6.8 out of 10 if I had to get like very specific, very granular.
Yeah, okay. And I will say, I had seen other reviews from other influencers and folks who had seen it very early, giving it a 7 out of 10, and that made me a little cautious. And I will say I went in with lower expectations, because I had heard that this movie wasn't going to blow us away. So non-spoilery review, I think we'll kind of settle on maybe a 6.5 out of 10. That being said, that's not, people kind of think it needs to be a 7 or 8 out of 10 in order to be good, and I don't think so. I think a 6 out of 10 is still good, and it's Star Wars in the movie theater, and it's always going to be exciting to have Star Wars in the movie theater, so I enjoyed the heck out of it. It was a good movie, and it was safe. There's very little that left me really disappointed. There was way more good things than things that weren't good. So this is the point in the video where we're going to talk about things that happened in the movie. So this is where spoilery territory could come in. So if you don't want any spoilers, this is the time where you may want to pause and then come back after you've seen the movie. Or although if you don't mind spoilers, then keep going. I will say this. I don't think there's anything that I'm going to talk about that would ruin your enjoyment of the film. So if you're on the fence about spoilers, don't worry. Okay. So here we go. Let's talk about the first act. I had kind of predicted that the first act was going to be all of this stuff that we saw with the snow and the AT-AT walkers, and like Mando finishing a job of killing some Imperials, and then kind of going back to the Rebel base. That part was great. I feel like the opening was very, very strong. The fight sequences, there was a lot of stuff he did, like where he just walked in kicking butt. And that's kind of what you expect. That's a really strong opening for a movie. It's a really strong opening for Mandalorian to come in and kick butt. Shining armor, looked really good on the big screen. There was a scene where he there was some guys trying to ambush him, and he shot fire down to kind of blind them and walk through, and just there were some clever things that he did, that he was just wiping the floor with the Imperials. Really liked it. I had seen, there was some footage that came out of a Disney Con of the entire fight sequence of him on the AT-AT walker. It still didn't disappoint. I had seen a lot of it already, so there weren't many surprises. There was a kind of a shameless excuse for merchandising with him riding the AT-RT. It absolutely did not need to be there at all. There was definitely points in this movie that were done probably for merchandising. There were things that were done because somebody said, hey, this would be cool. Wouldn't it be cool if we put something like the AT-RT? He has his jetpack on. He has no reason at all to get on board this slow-moving little walker. I get that, yeah, he walked downhill, and it did move kind of fast, but he would have been way faster and way safer if he had just flown. But he almost got killed 4 times because he's trying to dodge in between all these walkers trying to step on him. There's like, dude, you have your jetpack, just fly. You're trying to get on top of this thing anyway, just fly. It was like there was so again there, and I don't get bent out of shape over things like this because they are. It's for the sake of a cool shot, like seeing these AT-ATs like trying to shoot him and stuff like that. Like it made for some cool effects, but it was kind of like, come on, dude. But these things happen in Star Wars. There's a lot of things that happen in Star Wars where you're like, come on, dude, you don't need to do that. But I like the way the first thing ended. We do have Zeb. We see Zeb in there quite a bit. It's nice to see Zeb. As a big fan of Star Wars Rebels, I love seeing Zeb. But Zeb is, my son had some thoughts about Zeb. But yeah, go ahead. He thought that Zeb didn't really need to be in the movie as much because the role that Zeb played could have been filled by any generic rebel as just like the wingman there to pick things up, and that's fine. But the second act of the movie, like you get back now, there were some cool cameos. And you get some of them in between the first and the second act, basically during the Sigourney Weaver scene where, again, Mando turns in the bounty and then gets the next assignment. And there were a lot of cameos that they were specifically cameos of folks that we had seen in The Mandalorian, like season 2, and like a lot of the pilots. Dave Filoni's in there, like briefly, and I think a lot of the writers were in there. I just saw it, so I think Doug Chang might have been in there, and a couple of the writers and directors from different episodes of Mandalorian and the story group and stuff like that were in there. So I don't have a list of everybody that was there. It'd be a cool one to watch back again and be like, see who you can see in the bar. But a lot of those are some of the. Folks who are watching who don't know them are like, why are all the pilots old? And it's because they're folks that worked on this movie and that worked on the Mandalorian show and stuff like that. A lot of them are, and so that's cool. But they're also folks that you've seen, with little cameos throughout the seasons of the Mandalorian. So that was neat seeing some of them. I liked the second act. The second act was probably my favorite part of the movie as a whole. The second act, they go to a different. Star Wars movies typically have 3 general acts with 3 different color schemes and locations and motifs and stuff like that. The second act is all about like this cyberpunk planet. And of course very predictable. I feel like almost everything was predictable in this movie. I knew he was going to finish an Imperial bounty, then get an assignment to go rescue Rada the Hutt. The trailer told us all that. He goes to rescue Rada the Hutt and come to find out, Rada doesn't want to be rescued. Oh, surprise, surprise. Again, we kind of figured that out from the trailer because Rada looks like he's living it up in the gladiatorial arena. So he gets there and, a lot of good fight action sequences. Multiple, like so much action in Act 2. Like from the very beginning, lots of action in Act 2 all the way throughout. It's a very intense and exciting act and an exciting chapter of the movie. Very, very cool. A lot of things going on. Also, I love the music. This is one of the coolest things. It doesn't feel like Star Wars music. It feels like cyberpunk music. The planet was a cyberpunk themed planet. We've seen cyberpunk-esque looking planets in Star Wars many times before. It is definitely a thing. And there's also a brief time where we go to Nal Hutta. That was a surprise, but Nal Hutta is largely the third act, so I'm going to hold off on Nal Hutta until I get to Act 3. But overall, I loved Act 2, not just for the music and not just for the action, but for Rada the Hutt. This is one thing the trailer didn't really spoil as much of how good of a job they did with Rada the Hutt. Maybe the star of the whole movie is the CGI department and the VFX department doing Rada really, really well. There's a couple of things that I really liked about Rada the Hutt, and it's not just how his character arc was written, although I love the way his character arc was written. It's not just how he was voiced and how he was performed. That was also extremely good, and I know the guy's name, and I just can't pull it off the top of my head right now. Again, we just saw it. I'm doing this no notes. But, like, he did a great job voicing Rada the Hutt. Really good job, as a matter of fact. I was very, very impressed with that. But the VFX on Rada's face and his eyes and his nostrils and everything, I thought was really good. I really, really liked it. First impressions, I think I liked it so much because they somehow captured the look of Jabba the Hutt so much better. And I was talking with my son today about the special edition of Star Wars, and one of the things, and this might be why I liked it so much. We were talking about some of the goods, the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of the special edition, the changes that Lucas had made to the original Star Wars movies, and how I said some of them were really good, some of them were just kind of okay, and some of them were very bad. And for the just okay parts, I put the original Jabba the Hutt scene from episode 4 in there because it was cool to me, because it was an original scene that was cut and then was restored, and I liked that at the time. But at the same time, the CGI for Jabba the Hutt wasn't very good, and so it made Jabba look super weird. And I always preferred Empire Strikes Back version of Jabba because he looked so great in Return of the Jedi. Did I say Empire Strikes Back? I apologize. It's late. We went to a late showing, and I'm kind of high up on popcorn and slushies. So a lot of sugar in my system right now. Return of the Jedi's Jabba the Hutt was just a really, really good design. And they didn't quite nail it in that special edition version of A New Hope. So special edition Jabba didn't look great. But when we saw Rada the Hutt, like up close, I was like, wow, they nailed the eyes, they nailed the facial features, they nailed that family look, like he has the look of his father. And I thought that was great. So overall, Rada the Hutt, maybe the star of the whole movie in a lot of ways, like, or the sleeper hit of the whole movie. Loved Rada. Hope we see more Rada. I think they did a lot of great things with his character. They made you really respect him and like him too, which was cool. And his fighting style was so cool. It was really, really cool fighting style. So like everything about Rada was really, really great. I loved it. So that's Act 2. My favorite part of the movie was Act 2, between the music, the CGI for Rada, the intense action sequences. They were all great. A lot of really cool stuff that was happening throughout that movie, or throughout that scene. It felt like a movie within a movie. So we have a couple of, we have a little bit of an interlude in before Act 3 kind of starts, where Embo shows up. You get I love the little Babu Freak aliens that show up. They're great comic relief. You always have to have a little bit of comic relief. So, all of that shows up. We've got the Razor Crest, and this was another theme that I feel like was happening throughout the movie, is that Din Djarin was getting a lot of things back that he didn't have, that he lost throughout Mando's seasons 1, 2, and 3. He got the Razor Crest back. He got a lot of other things back. Like he got his weapon back. He got the stuff, a lot, like everything he started with Mando season 1, episode 1. Like everything that he lost from that episode and beyond, he got back. Now he still kept the fancy Beskar armor, so he didn't get like the old armor back. But he got his guns back. He got a lot of gadgets and his ship back. So like that was maybe another theme too, which was kind of cool. So a good send off with Rada. He lets Rada go. We go into the Act 3, where Mando gets captured by Embo. It was cool to see Embo. Embo was done really well, but Embo was maybe going to be a little bit of a disappointment to some folks. I don't know. I feel like he did cool things, but I feel like they could have done more with him. Maybe. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that. That's just a first reaction judgment. But I liked the way the Hutts were. Now, Nal Hutta, I thought Nal Hutta was a little bit more of a bustling planet. Not quite Coruscant level, but definitely more cityscapes, definitely more industrial, definitely more vibrant and like New York City kind of esque. And maybe I'm thinking of Nar Shaddaa, because there's 2 planets for the Hutts, right? There's Nal Hutta and Nar Shaddaa. So maybe I'm thinking of Nar Shaddaa. I've got to go out. So again, this is straight after seeing the movie, no notes, initial reactions. But I wasn't expecting Nal Hutta to look looks more like Kashyyyk than anything else, or a cross between Kashyyyk and Tatooine, because they definitely, as a design though, I thought the planet was designed kind of cool. It did have a unique look in that it was kind of swampy, but it still had some of those sandstone Tatooine hut kind of vibes going on with it. It was a very interesting set design for that planet. I just was expecting it to be more civilized, more city-esque. City-esque. I don't know if that's a word. My son also reminded me, he's like, but Dad, it's a whole planet. They could have cities. And I'm like, yes, it is a whole planet, but Star Wars typically makes an entire planet look exactly the same everywhere. Like Tatooine might have, a river or a lake somewhere, but you'll never see it, right? So, that was my thoughts for the beginning of Act 3. Again, Din is taken prisoner, and kind of there are a lot of echoes of Return of the Jedi with Jabba kind of capturing Luke and kind of throwing him in the pit. This kind of the same thing happens to Din. It's not bad. They do a little bit of plot exposition here, and because they want the movie to be also approachable by people who haven't. You shouldn't have to have seen all of the episodes of Mandalorian, and you shouldn't have to know why it's important for him to keep his helmet on all the time, and so on and so forth. And they do some exposition rather in this scene. And they find out that they've captured Rada again, and they want to kill him so they can have be the crime lord boss, and they can have the throne and all of this stuff. And so now the plot of everything comes together in Act 3. Din ends up fighting all these monsters, gets poisoned. Grogu comes and saves him with the little Babu Freak guys. They're adorable. They're comic relief. And there's a really interesting scene that almost feels like it's Muppets. Like certain animatronics, or not animatronics, but certain droids and monsters and stuff feel like it were done with like puppeting. I feel like there was definitely some puppeting going on. And so it's cool to see practical effects in some scenes. Definitely Rod of the Hutt was not all practical effects. That one's CGI, but there was definitely their fair share of practical effects. The problem with the movie is, well, I think the biggest problem, and it's not a huge problem, but it's the biggest problem with the movie, comes after Din escapes and he's poisoned by this snake, and then he almost dies, and Grogu has to kind of hide his body and waiting for him to heal. And so there's this like multiple day or maybe even weeks or however long it takes. Like I think the idea is it's probably like 4 or 5 days or something where Grogu is like feeding him water and trying to like nurse him back to health. And it's very much like Dagobah, right? It's like Grogu gets a little. He mirrors Yoda in this scene, and I wonder if that's not there to be like foreshadowing of where Grogu might be someday. And there's a lot of people up until this point talking about how you got to be prepared to let go and be prepared to let Din Djarin die. Or they don't even call him Din Djarin, I don't think, once throughout the whole movie. I think they just call him the Mandalorian. Again, designing it to also be appreciable by regular audiences. But this scene of Grogu kind of like meditating in the woods and hoping that Mando survives, it's cute, and I think it's an important breakup of the action because there's a lot of action surrounding this, but I feel like it went on for too long. What was it, like 20 minutes of like
it felt like a third of the movie.
Yeah, it was a massive amount of the movie, and it was just really slow and boring. And I feel like if they had cut that down by half, they could have told you the same story, and it wouldn't have disrupted the flow of the movie as much as it did. Yeah, that was my thought. But there were still some cool things happening. One interesting thing is that Grogu finds like another, I don't know, like an old hickory kind of fisherman
very much like
monster, and gets. And it's weird because he's stealing fish from this guy, and then it turns out the guy is like, "Hey, you better stop stealing my fish." And he turns out to be friendly.
Very like Bayou kind of.
Yeah, but there was a really interesting plot device because Embo shows up and tells this guy, "It's like, hey, Din Djarin's out here somewhere, and he's poisoned by the poison of a water snake." So like it gave him crucial information. It was definitely a contrivance.
Maybe,
yeah.
Maybe he just said that, he's like been poisoned, and the other guy just kind of put that together.
Oh no, I get that, but it was very convenient, especially the timing, sure. Right? It was very convenient, and that's fine. Again, sometimes you have to suspend your disbelief and not take it too seriously because again, it is a movie; it's meant to entertain you. So this guy gives Grogu the cure, and then Grogu, nurses Mando back to health, and what do you know? He gets better. I mean, it's a sweet moment, and it's a really sweet moment for Grogu. Like, there's a lot of parts of it that are cute and nice and adorable and meaningful, but it just was too much of that one scene. That's my initial reaction. Again, I might feel differently in a week or after another viewing or something like that, but that's my initial take. So then Mando wakes up and they say, okay, do we leave or do we go back and, because they're going to keep coming after us. And they've got Rada, and Rada's a friend by this point. Rada and Grogu have become like buddies and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Rada and Grogu have a really nice relationship where you get to sort of see them bond and like.
We see them playing on the beach. It was a really nice.
Such a good.
That was an important scene, and it wasn't like it was. There were a lot of good scenes like that. I love the scene of Rada and Grogu playing on the beach, and Mando's like watching it and being just like, it's funny too because sometimes even though he has no facial expressions, you're still able to get what he is thinking or feeling based on the context and the way the camera is done. So like I think the cinematography in this movie was actually pretty good for scenes like that. It's got to be hard to get an actor to give you a performance when he's wearing a mask. So Pedro Pascal does that really well.
And that's a thing that a lot of things struggle with. Like think about Spider-Man or something.
Yeah, you have no facial expression. You can't see their eyebrows. Although they do things with the eyes for Spider-Man to give you some of that.
With like Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. Like that's why you see a lot of actors use their hands a lot when they can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a way to convey facial expression when you don't have your face.
Yeah. So overall, like Act 3, it ends kind of typically, like it has a good kind of ending, a couple more fight scenes, a good fight scene with Embo. You don't see too many people die, so it does allow for people to come back, although, we do see a couple of Hutts die. There's also a really interesting scene when they're first going into Nal Hutta and he's walking through the chambers. There's a whole lot of like little side scenes of Hutts doing weird activity. Like I feel like there was a Hutt orgy going on in one of these things. I'm not sure what it was supposed to be, but it looked slug naughty. Hashtag slug naughty. That's what it looked like. I don't know. You make up your own mind if you see it. Yeah, I don't know.
It did.
I mean, it wasn't rated R or anything like that. So, it just, I think they put like they were eating, but like they were moaning when they were eating. It was definitely a weird experience. So there were some weird slug things that happened in there. I don't know. I'm going to withhold some judgment on that, but I'm just going to say like it was something. It was weird. And then you have the cavalry come in. I think we all expected like X-Wings to come in and do a bombing run. There were some parts that, again, I'll say it was cool for the purpose of the story, but like the very end and he's like, fire everything you got on my location. I'm like, why? I don't understand why they needed to fire proton torpedoes at the house he was in so that he had to jump out. It just made for like a cool, hey, we're all going to jump out in slow motion while there's an explosion behind us. I get it, but why did you already killed the Hutts? You didn't need to blow that building up. There was no reason for them to blow that building up.
I think it was all the droids that were in there.
There were a lot of droids in there, but they're going to fly away anyway. So,
Mando said it would be cool.
That's it.
Strictly for aura farming purposes.
Aura farming. There you go. I don't use that term, but the kids these days, they use terms like that. So I get that. This is why we have kids. They help keep us young. But no, it was definitely interesting. So overall, like there was some comic relief. There was a lot of really cool action scenes. There were some pacing problems and some good moments. What I was disappointed in also, outside of the pacing problem, the other thing I was disappointed in that it didn't feel like there was any connection or tie-in to the greater universe. And that can be a good or a bad thing. It's 50-50. I would have loved to have seen a Luke Skywalker cameo. I would have loved to have seen Hera or Ezra or the Ghost show up in the background. They have all these, they have a bunch of X-Wings and Y-Wings. There was a B-Wing at the base that they were at, and that was cool. But I would love to have seen a little bit more. I would have seen the B-Wing in flight. I love B-Wings, folks. I would love to have seen some capital ships. Didn't get much of that. X-Wing players, if you're an X-Wing miniatures game player, this was a really good movie for you. You got to see a lot of cool fight scenes. You got to see a lot of cool stuff. You got to see some new Hutt cartel fighters that were super cool. Those fighters were cool.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And they had folding wings and they launched them out of pods and stuff like that. Like, that was groovy. So if you like space combat, at least it had a little bit of space combat. I love to have space combat, but I want capital ships. I was hoping there'd be a Thrawn tie-in or something leading up to Ahsoka Season 2. You didn't get nothing of that. So when I talk about like how spoilers aren't going to ruin it for you, there was no spoilery stuff that really mattered outside of Rada the Hutt being awesome. I think that was the biggest surprise for me is how much I loved Rada the Hutt. So, do you remember the actor's name?
Jeremy Allen White.
Jeremy Allen White. So for you guys who were watching earlier and I couldn't remember his name, is Jeremy Allen White. I knew who he was, I just couldn't pull the name off the top of my head. He gave a fantastic performance. The VFX department did a fantastic job with him. The animators did it. Everybody who worked, and again, I think the director probably did a pretty good job. The camera people got great angles on stuff. Again, it's hard to get a good reaction out of Mando when he's got a mask on. A lot of these things were great.
It's a movie that you can tell that a lot of people had a lot of fun working on.
Oh, I believe it.
Because there's a lot of stuff that you can see that you're like, oh, that's an interesting way to... Especially with the Hutts. I bet you they had a lot of fun working on the Hutts because of how... There's a whole lot of stuff that they do. You don't really see Hutts move all that often, aside from in the Clone Wars show. Maybe.
True. You see them in animation, but not in live action. And this was an opportunity to really peel back the veil on... what a Hutt palace would look like. You got more stuff going on there, and that was pretty cool.
Exposed a lot of how would a Hutt do this?
How would a Hutt fight in an arena? That was really cool. That was one of the more interesting things that happened. I'm glad we got to see it. I hope we see more of Rada the Hutt. It looks like we probably will. I wonder, it does leave me wondering, is Dave Filoni still going to try to put together an Avengers-style movie at some point? There was talk of that for a long time. I don't think this was really it. This wasn't, there weren't enough cameos, there weren't enough things. This was basically, my final thoughts is this was probably all the plots of Mandalorian Season 4 that were rolled up into one movie, and it was probably written to be a series, a whole season of Mando, and it suffered because of that, because the pacing wasn't quite there. That being said, it was still very fun and entertaining, earning it about 6.5 out of 10 from us overall. It was safe, it was fun, it was visually beautiful. Maybe I should upgrade it to a 7. The more I talk about it, Are you okay with me? I changed our rating up to a solid 7 out of 10.
You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
We're going to give it a 7 out of 10, folks. It's getting a 7 out of 10. Again, there's things that it could have improved on. It didn't do anything to super blow me away, but it did a couple of things really well. It's also one more thing about Zeb. Zeb did have at least one good fight scene. When Zeb is in this hallway and he's doing his acrobatics and stuff, I thought that was kind of cool. It moved so quickly, though. I don't know if I really got to appreciate Zeb. Would have liked a little more, but actually, what would have been great? I mentioned this to you in the car. Callus, Agent Callus, Alexander Callus, or Sideburns Callus. You should have again. That wouldn't have been that hard for him to do. You don't have to do any makeup, right? He's just a human with sideburns. You just need somebody with sideburns.
Callus probably would have fit the role. I know you mentioned this earlier, but Zeb doesn't really have a
purpose,
a specific place. Even in the stuff that he is in, he doesn't stay there for too long.
Yeah,
he's just kind of his buddy who helps him in very plot convenient ways. But
I think he's there for the future. I think we're going to see another season of Rebels with Ahsoka season 2. I expect Zeb to be involved in that, and I think they're going to want to have him be a little more recognizable before they bring him into everything else. That's my guess. And that's where we're going to go ahead and sign off, everybody. That's our initial reaction here for our Mandalorian and Grogu. Let me know when you've seen it. Let me know some of your thoughts. Do you agree with any of the points that I've made? Do you disagree with any of the points I made? Have you seen it yet? Let me know some of your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're a patron, thank you guys so much. We got some really cool giveaways that are going to be going on the Patreon really soon, so stay tuned for those. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. This is the way. The spice must flow. You can't take the sky from me, so say we all. And always wash your socks.